I am very pleased to welcome you to this afternoon's forum. Roger F. Cram, while teaching classes about the Tuskegee Airmen at Hiram College, researched for 5 years how the famed Tuskegee Airmen, the first black U.S. military pilots in the early 1940s, solved their most unsurmountable problems peacefully. During his research, he discovered 14 values the Tuskegee Airmen repeatedly used in determining their course of action peacefully to address their problems and develop a problem-solving matrix based upon these techniques. Cram then compared these remarkable skills to the techniques used by other world heroes of peace. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Roger F. Cram to the City Club podium.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here addressing the youth of Cleveland because the Tuskegee Airmen are interested in promoting youth programs and they have their own Tuskegee Scholarship. And it's their values and it's their peaceful conflict resolution skills that is their legacy that we want you wonderful people to carry into the future. Let me first give you a brief history of what these men went through. The two men behind me, the two heroes behind me, in 1941, over 50 years before you were born, enlisted in the Tuskegee Airmen program. They were living in a country that was segregated and filled with prejudicial discrimination. I'm sure you've studied discrimination and prejudice in your classes, but let me give you somewhat of an idea of how it affected them. In the southern states, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, South Carolina, there were usually two drinking fountains. One said black, one said white. You could tell the one that was for coloreds because it either didn't work or didn't have any plumbing connected to it. If you were black, you were not allowed to try on clothes in a clothing store. And if you bought clothes, you were not allowed to return them. Restaurants and movie theaters were for whites only. Some restaurants served blacks, but according to Jim Crow laws, there had to be a 7-foot wall separating the two portions of the restaurants. On public buses, blacks had to sit in the back of the bus. They could not sit with whites in the front, and if they did so, the books provided a fine of up to $500. Public restrooms were usually for whites only. In the military, however, it was much the same. The United States military also was fully segregated, and the blacks and the white personnel were fully separated with different living quarters. Blacks in the military were used as cooks, janitors, road builders, and grave diggers. According to a study in 1925 through 1939 made by the War College in Montgomery, Alabama, blacks should never be given a position of command. According to this study, their brain weighed 25% less than a white man's brain, and they were to be kept away from all complicated machinery like artillery, tanks, and aircraft. Because of this, there were no black pilots in the military. There were no black aircraft mechanics. There were no crew members of aircraft that were black or air traffic controllers. When blacks applied to be pilots in the United States Army, their applications were thrown away as soon as they walked out of the room. If they took a physical exam by a flight surgeon, the flight surgeon was ordered to fail them for made-up reasons. President Roosevelt, however, against the advice of his military advisors, started a flying school for blacks in 1941. And this flying school was in Tuskegee, Alabama, thus the name the Tuskegee Airmen. The Army Air Corps was not happy about training blacks, but they had to because of the president's order. However, some Southern congressmen and Southern senators and Southern generals got together and decided to make the Tuskegee flight training program a failure. They were going to show once and for all that blacks could not fly aircraft. The Tuskegee Airmen were trained as fighter pilots, bomber pilots and crew, mechanics, armament engineers, navigators, and air traffic controllers. Let's see how the program was set up to fail. The first Tuskegee Airmen recruits were required to be college graduates, even though the white fighter pilots and bomber pilots only had to be high school graduates. The Tuskegee Airmen who applied for flight training were immediately put on a demerit system. 3 demerits, they were sent home. They were given a demerit if someone didn't like their attitude. They were given a demerit if there was dust under their bed. They were given a demerit if they couldn't bounce a quarter off their bed sheets. Within 6 weeks, 61% of them were flunked and sent home. The Army Air Corps was indeed trying to make this program fail. The second class of the Tuskegee Airmen, 71% failed and were sent home in the first few weeks. In an attempt to make the black flying program fail even more, the Tuskegee Airmen were insulted and degraded with regularity. The intention was to get them angry so they would become disciplinary problems. And once a disciplinary problem, they could close the program and send them home. However, the Tuskegee Airmen decided how they were going to behave. And they based their behavior on their values and on the type of person they wanted to be. They did not base their behavior on how others behaved toward them. The Tuskegee Airmen knew that responding with insults to those demeaning them would make them demeaning as well. Therefore, to those who treated them without dignity, they were not indignant. To those showing them disrespect, they were not disrespectful. Each morning, the Tuskegee Airmen tried to take total control, not over others, but over how they reacted to them. Another way the Tuskegee Airmen were discriminated against was they were given airplanes that didn't fly. They had been in combat and were all shot up and unsafe. The idea was that when they couldn't fly the aircraft, false reports would be sent to Washington saying, well, we gave the airmen airplanes, but they were not able to fly them.